This is Jason Clemmons, Doctor of Chiropractic at the Rock Health and Wellness Center, and this is Life with Jason Clemmons, DC. We are live right here from the Rock Health and Wellness Center studios in Lubbock, Texas, like we almost always are on Monday through Friday nights at 6 o'clock. It's Wednesday, November 27th, the day before Thanksgiving, and we are coming to you right here on the radio, on social media, and we're glad to be here. I'm glad to be here. I've kind of reached the stage in life and the way that the family dynamics have worked out that I have I don't have to travel at least not on this Thanksgiving. So I made it to like 53 I think last year, and we maybe it's been a couple years, I don't remember, but my whole life we traveled somewhere on Thanksgiving, like a lot of you guys are probably doing now, traveling and getting ready to travel and all that sort of thing. And so I don't have to do that. And my mother-in-law showed up at the house just a few minutes ago, and she's there. And that's my mom's is going to come over here tomorrow. And so that's it. It's us and the kids, and it's going to be a small group that are going to be at the house. So the awesome part about that is I could be here on the radio with you tonight. I could be live, and we could be talking about health. And there's so many things we could talk about this week. We could set a record, really. This is a great week to talk about health and wellness. And so, it's just, everybody knows it. And I'm not going to pretend like that we're all just going to be super healthy this week. You could join me if you want to. You could just say, no, I don't think I need a pie or anything like that. But what I thought what we'd do tonight is I thought we'd just have a kind of a fun little conversation with ourselves about what we're going to experience over the next couple of days. So what's going to actually happen to us? And I say us because we're all the team in this deal right here, right? I say that us because I know that that we're all trying to get through life together, and we're all trying to figure out how to make all this work. And so hang on one second. I just want to make sure, speaking of making sure this is working. Just want to make sure that that everything is going through on our social media page. Sometimes I hit the button twice and I don't mean to. And so I just want to make sure that we are live and we're going, and because it seems like we are. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go ahead with it. But yeah, I thought tonight, because I know what's going to happen. We're probably going to lose some sleep. We're probably going to eat some foods that are not on the health and wellness menu. We're probably going to deal with some of that stuff. And what is it that we're going to deal with, and why is it that we're going to deal with it? Why are you going to be sore tomorrow and Friday? Why are your joints going to hurt? Why are you going to feel tired? Why are you going to do that? And then you take this opportunity. I think we take this opportunity and we say to ourselves, okay, what we want to do is we want to make sure that we want to make sure that we understand. Sometimes you just play, and then when you play the game, you go back and watch the film, and then you learn from the film, and you didn't necessarily do as well as you thought, or you didn't. Sometimes you don't. The film always is pretty neutral. It's like you're not near as bad as you think you are when you think you're bad, and you're not near as good as you think you are when you think you're good, right? So a lot of times in a situation like this, when you're probably going to eat a piece of pie anyway, at least some of you are, then you can say to yourself, okay, when I eat pie, what happens to me? When I eat all this processed food, what happens to me? When I eat all these high omega-6 products, what happens to me? And then you can experience it by pre-framing it before you get there. So you can say to yourself, okay, I'm going to do that, and I'm going to try that. I'm going to see what happens there. So that's what we're going to do tonight. We're going to talk about that. And there's a combination of things. There's part of it's going to be serious, and then part of it's going to be Um, Not so much. Hey, if you're watching me on social media, would you send me a message? Just say yes, you're watching me on social media. Like just my it doesn't. It looks like I might be locked down, and I just want to make sure. I know radio's going, and we should be good to go on radio. And but if you're out there and you see that, because I'm not sure if we're getting through on our social media page, and I'd really like to know that. Um, if I'm talking to you like you're there, I'd kind of like for you to be there. But I'll say, yeah, if you're on social media, just would you send me a chat? Just say yes. Just say yes on the chat that you're there. You can hear me. That everything is fine. That nothing's messed up. Um, that that you can. And I found out last night. One of our listeners, you guys that are on social media, I found out last night that if you're watching me on YouTube or X and you send me a note, I get it in my software that I'm using to go online, but it disappears as soon as the show is over. As soon as I hit end stream, I lose the chats. So let me see what we got here. Yeah, Julie. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Julie. Appreciate that. Um, I what I get is I lose the note. So if I don't respond to you, if you're on a YouTube or X and you respond to me and I miss it, it's not because it's not because I'm ignoring you. It's just because I can't figure out how to respond back to you, and I don't know how to respond back on the YouTube. Like it won't let me do anything till tomorrow, and then it all goes offline and all that sort of thing. So I appreciate you making the comments, but I just don't. It's like I can't figure out exactly how to get to you. All the Facebook stuff, I can go right to it and I can see it, but all the rest of the stuff, I kind of lose it. So before we get into what we're doing tonight, I had one serious conversation today that I really do want to address. I want to address it for us because this might be a life and death type situation, or it really could be a, a, a real stressful situation for some people. I take care of a nurse that works nights, and she came in. She worked all night long, and then she came in this morning. She got adjusted. Really cool girl, and uh, she came in and she got adjusted, and she came from work, and I said, "How you doing?" She said, "Well, I want to get adjusted before I go home and go to bed." And I was like, awesome. I said, well, how was the night? Well, she works in the pediatric department of the hospital and takes care of kids. And she said, man, it's been busy. And I said, well, what have y'all been dealing with? Like, what is the problem? And she said, um, there's been lots of pneumonia in going around in these kids. And we're getting a lot of respiratory problems. We're getting a lot of pneumonia that's going on in the hospital. And I was like, about what age group are these kids that are dealing with pneumonia? And she said, I don't know for sure, but it's probably, she said, it seems like there's a lot of 5 to maybe 12-year-olds that are in the hospital with pneumonia right now. And that just really irritated me this morning. It irritated me because I got to do a better job of trying to help more people understand how to stay out of that, right? Like that is the foundational reason other than the good Lord puts us where He wants us to work. But how I got to this show right here was an argument during COVID with our mayor because he said to me, because I told him to calm down. I didn't tell him. I asked the city council and the mayor if they would calm down a little bit about making me out to be a villain in my own town. Right? You guys have been watching me now for over a year doing this show. Like I'm not a villain. I'm just a guy talking about health, trying to keep my people healthy. And they're making me out to be a villain because I won't follow their ways of doing things that I disagree with, right? So, but he made this statement to me. He said, Jason, the only thing I can tell you is, we've got 100 and I don't remember exactly the numbers, but he said we got 189 people in the hospital, say 200. It was a little less than I think, but he said we got 200 people in the hospital and 93% of those people are unvaccinated. And I said, well, okay. But at the time, you had um, at the time there was 3,000 cases of COVID in our town, and so and there was only 200 people in the hospital. That's 6%. I was doing the math right there, so I could say that. It's like he said, look, he said we've got 200 people in the hospital, and 93% of those people are unvaccinated. And I said, okay, that's fair. But you've got 3,000 cases of COVID in Lubbock right now, and you only have 200 people in the hospital. That's 6.67%. That's 7%. You've got 7% of the people in the hospital of the 3,000 people that have COVID. So why don't you teach the 7% of people how to stay out of the hospital and leave the other 97% of people alone? They can handle their own selves. A lot of those people don't need any help whatsoever, right? That was my point. It's like, look, I understand the hospitals are having a problem, but the reason that those people are in the hospital is because they're not handling the virus. It's not because of the virus. It's because they're not handling the virus properly. And they're not handling the virus properly because they're not healthy. That's why they weren't handling the virus. Okay, now let's fast forward 4 years later, and let's talk about the kids that are in the hospital with pneumonia. Why is it that you might have 20 kids in a classroom, you might have 700 kids in an elementary school, and that virus goes through that whole entire elementary school, but there's only 3 or 4 or 5 kids that end up in the hospital? What is it about those kids that caused those kids to go to the hospital, and the other kids that got the same identical virus didn't go to the hospital? I think we should focus on that. And I think we should share that information with people. And I think we should talk about the things, the inflammatory things and the sugar things and the cytokine storms and the leaking of into the gut, the fluid into the lung, the fluid that goes along with these high cytokine, high inflammatory responses, and what are some of the things that causes it, right? Because everybody that has had children, if you've had children, you absolutely know. It's like, come on, man. Nobody wants to have a 5-year-old to a 12-year-old have to go to the hospital because they got pneumonia. And one of the things that I can tell you that we're doing with those kids is we're destroying their immune system in their gut from the amount of sugar that those kids are eating. Now you say, well, Jason, look, all the kids are eating sugar, so why is it just these? That's a fair argument. I don't really disagree with that. But what could you do? If you're the parent of a child that is dealing with something like this, what could you do to help your child not go to the hospital and fill their lungs up with fluid? And it's the same thing you would do if you were trying to win the Olympics. It's the same thing that you would do if you were trying to be healthy on a daily basis, right? Those kids need to get their omega-3 fatty acids. Kids, I'm telling, I talk to moms all the time. I talked to a grandma this week that their granddaughter was dealing with, a granddaughter's a couple months old. And the granddaughter is dealing with colic and all this sort of thing. And then she got her first cold, and then here it comes, right? All this response. I talked to her about going to Nature's Tonic over there, talking to Brett and getting some omega-3s to put in that formula to try to balance that 6:3 ratio. There's omega-3s that are they're higher in DHA than they are EPA for the kids because the brain synapses and the brain building, so that they don't have our favorite fish oil that is 2-to-1 EPA, not for kids. Kids are going to have a fish oil that's higher in the DHA than they are in the EPA. And the other thing is vitamin D. Those two things. And I can map it. I'm not going to map it out for you tonight, but I can promise you I can promise you there's a map, there is a clear mapping of innate immune response, quick acting immune response, and secondary immune response. There is a definite response there to your omega-6 ratio, how much inflammation you have in your body, because the higher you have, the higher levels of inflammation that are in the body, the higher number of neutrophils that are in the tissue. And we're going to talk. We are going to talk about this tonight, and we're not going to. I'm not going to be beating you up about it. But when you have higher levels of inflammation, you have higher levels of white blood cells in your tissue looking for pathogens. And when that pathogen shows up, it will cause an extreme response because there's so many of those. If you have I don't know a great example, but um, if you have 5 soldiers in a fight, and then all of a sudden the enemy shows up, you're going to get a response that is equal to what 5 soldiers would respond, right? But if you had 500 soldiers and the enemy shows up, it's not going to be the same response. What you're going to get is a completely different response with 500 soldiers than you would with 5 soldiers, right? If you had 5 neutrophils in your tissue when the pathogen showed up, you would have a 5x response, and you would get 5x the amount of fluid in your lungs. But if you had 500 neutrophils or white blood cells in your tissue when the pathogen shows up, then you're going to have a 500x response, and you're going to get 500 times the amount of relatively the amount of fluid in your lungs. And that's going to cause your lungs to fill up, and you're not going to be able to breathe, right? So that's the first thing, is the amount of inflammation that we have in the body. The second thing is that initial response of the immune system attack and the dendritic cells. You can look it up. The rate that the dendritic cell gets to the lymph tissue to get those B cells involved in that secondary immune response is related to the amount of vitamin D in the body. When the vitamin D levels are low, the dendritic cells move slowly to the lymph tissue. They go in slow motion all the way to the lymph tissue, and it takes longer for the secondary immune response to take place, which means it gives the pathogen a longer amount of time to set up shop. It means that your initial immune response has to fight the fight longer. When those 500 soldiers are on the wall, and here comes the enemy, they got to get the word back to headquarters as quickly as possible, so that headquarters sends the planes over the top and bombs the enemy quickly. They don't want to stay there and have to fight those dudes for a week. But if they can't get the signal back to headquarters quick enough, they can't get that secondary response. We can't get the cover that we need, and it takes longer to fight the fight. And that's what happens in a respiratory response in some type of deal with pneumonia. So we could help those kids stay out of the hospital if we would just make sure that the things that we're doing to give those kids a chance. And one of the things would be get them on some fish oil. And number 2 is make sure they're having some vitamin D and making sure their levels are up. Why all of a sudden? Y'all, it's such an interesting time, right? It's an interesting time on November 27th. Why is my nurse lady saying on November 27th, all of a sudden we got a bunch of kids with pneumonia in the hospital? How come she didn't say that in August? How come she didn't come in August and July and September and say, man, there sure are a bunch of kids in the hospital with pneumonia? Was the reason she didn't say that is because those kids, the vitamin D levels were higher. That's one of the things. Now, they were still eating the same sugar and they weren't taking their omega-3s, but their vitamin D levels were higher. And the higher those levels were, the better their immune response went, right? So if you got some kids, really think about that. really think about whether or not you're getting your kids your omega-3 and your vitamin D. And if it's the same thing, if you're not a kid, if you're 5 years old or 12 years old or 18 years old or 25 years old or 60 years old or 98 years old, it's the same physiology that works for all of us. If you're rich or you're poor, if you're white or you're Mexican or you're black or you're Chinese, it doesn't make any difference. It doesn't make any difference. If you're dark skinned, you really got to make sure that you get your vitamin D because it's harder for you to get that synthesized. It takes more sunshine for that to happen. So, to piggyback off of that, and it's to kind of take that idea, because I hate kids that are sick, right? I hate it for them that they've dealt with it. I had a little sister that had to deal with that for her whole life. She was always in the hospital multiple times a year. And we didn't know the things that we know now, but maybe the things that we know now can help them out. So, having said that, I thought we would talk about, because I showed this picture for you guys that are on social media. I showed this picture today to one of my patients because she's having arthritis pain. She came into me and she said, "My hands are killing me," and I was like, "Well." Because I want to take this and I want to kind of map it, and then I want to map it to what we're going to do with our food so that we can understand how we're going to feel here in the next couple of days. And you guys that are not going to choose to participate in processed foods and high sugar content, you'll just appreciate how much better you feel knowing that you didn't participate in it. I'm not going to eat a piece of pie this Thanksgiving. Didn't eat one last year or the year before that. I'm not eating a piece of pie. I'm not having any biscuits. I'm not having a roll. I'm not having any mashed potatoes. You guys can all have it if you want to. Totally fine. Not throwing any stones at you. I still love you. Just let you know what's happening, right? But you can do it. You can go through Thanksgiving and just be thankful. You can go through Thanksgiving and just really be thankful for the things that you have and the people that you have in your life. You don't have to toxify yourself. As as some of you are making pies. Right? How many of you, raise your hand, you got your pie crust out right now. It's sitting out there on the counter. Like, you already made your pie crust for today, and you're just going to you're about to get all that pecan and all this chocolate pie and all that stuff. You're about to get that made this evening, right? You got your cornbread already cooked, so you can tear it all up, let it sit out overnight and dry. You guys do that thing too, right? That same thing, we'll have it at the house, but we won't need it. But let's get back to it. So the lady's telling me, she comes in and she tells me, my hands are killing me. And I said, it's been my experience that hand pain, unless and maybe even if you are, but if you're like a carpenter and you're swinging a hammer all day long or something like that, okay, maybe you might have some hand pain because of overuse. But for the most of us, because this lady's not a carpenter, she's a nurse actually, and that's two nurses, and I had another nurse this week, and doctors and physical therapists and all that stuff, right? We take care of all those people at the Rock Health and Wellness Center. We don't fuss with them. We don't fight with them. We just talk to them about science, and we just love them. That's it. Okay. So why do your hands get tight? Okay. Think about it. If you're going to eat some pie tomorrow, if you're going to fill your plate up with a bunch of carbohydrates, right? And you're going to do that. I want you to feel tomorrow night, I want you to feel how stiff your fingers are. Like, your fingers are going to feel fat. They're going to feel fat and they're going to feel stiff tomorrow night. And I want you to think about it when it happens. I want you to think to yourself, why are my hands stiff tonight? I don't understand my joints are aching. You're going to feel it in your knees too, probably. You'll feel it maybe in your hips and your knees. Your feet might be a little bit achy, right? And why is that? Well, let's talk about leaky gut just a little bit. And I want to show you what this is so you can kind of understand it, so that you're like, oh, he's not just making that he's not just making that up. I know sometimes it sounds like I make some of this stuff up, because I may be the only person that says it in your life, right? But you might be thinking this boy is crazy. I'm not. I'm just showing you what leaky gut looks like, right? Okay, so I got a picture for you guys on the radio. I tell you what, let's hold up just a second, because we got 30 seconds, 43 seconds, and we got to go to a break. So I don't want to leave you guys. I don't want to have to mess that up and miss the break and all that stuff like I do sometimes. So, hey, if you want to send me a text, 806-794-0400. If you want to send me a message on social media, send it to me. And then let's go and break for just a second. And I'll because the radio, we got to do some commercials, and then when we get back, we'll break down this, and I want to look at IgAs and the immune response, and then tie it into how your body deals with it with sugar. So you guys stick around with us. We'll be right back. This is Life with Jason Clemmons, DC. This picture that I'm showing you, comes from from Medical Nutrition from Mars, and Marz, Russell B. Mars. He's an ND, naturopathic physician. This book right here, I got when I was in chiropractic school. This is not something that's new. And so I want this is 2002, published by Omni Press, 2002. So I was getting this right off the, this is when I started chiropractic school, was in 2002. So this medical nutrition book from Mars it's not new stuff, right? It's the leaky gut idea has not just all of a sudden become a thing. The leaky gut idea has been around for a while. And a lot of times we don't really understand what it means. And so that's really what I want to show you. But what will happen is whenever your gut leaks, it will push whatever nutrients. I mean, I'm going to just since we're on the commercial, let me just because you guys on social media can hear all this, and those people on the radio are. I'm listening to a commercial in my ear right now, but they can't see these pictures anyway. But you guys can see them, and what this. See, this is your intestine area over here, above these little humps right here. So that's your epithelial cells, and this is the lumen where the food is going through, right? And what will end up happening is if it's leaky or for whatever reason it gets through, but here's your leaky gut syndrome problem, where you actually get a larger piece of food that was supposed to be just going through and just going to get eliminated. Like I always say, what would happen if you swallowed a penny? You would pass that penny, right? You wouldn't absorb the penny into your bloodstream. It would just pass right through you. Let me get us back. I'll keep talking about this. Okay, everybody, we're back. This is Life with Jason Clemmons, DC. We're talking about leaky gut and then the down the stream problems that come along with it. And the reason I want to talk about it tonight is because I want it to be fresh in your mind tomorrow when your hands swell up. Tomorrow when your arthritis in your hands, you know, that old term that they use, gets all flared up. When your feet and your knees hurt when you ache, you've been sitting over there watching the ball game, and you get up and you walk back to get you another piece of pie, and then your knees hurt and your ankles are tight, and you're just like, oh golly, I don't feel good. Like, this hurts, right? I want you to know, and then when that happens, I want you to think about this, and I want you to be like, oh, I see. That's what he meant. Like, here's what's happened. So I'm talking about the leaky gut, and I'm showing a picture on social media of like and it comes out of a book that I got when I was in chiropractic school in 2002. So the food is moving through there, but all of a sudden a big chunk of food, poorly digested food particles due to the lack of hydrochloric acid. So let's say you're taking a bunch of Rolaids or Tums or Nexium or Prilosec or Proton something or another, Protonics, whatever those things are that they have these days that turns your pumps off in your stomach, right? If you've got lack of hydrochloric acid, pancreatic enzymes, bile salts, you didn't chew your food very good, or it's moving through too fast, any of those things that might happen. And what happens is you got this big chunk of food, and it's microscopic still, but there's a big chunk of food that is not supposed to be getting into your bloodstream. It's not supposed to be there, but it leaked through the leaky gut situation. I'm going to go back to that in just a second. And now you have a particle in your bloodstream that's not supposed to be in your bloodstream. Now, your immune system doesn't go for that. I mean, like if you're sitting there in your house tonight and you're listening to the show and whatever you're doing, you got your family or whatever, and all of a sudden some stranger comes walking in your house. You're more than, let's just say a stranger with a machete. Let's make it more serious. Some stranger with a machete comes walking in your house. You're probably not just going to sit there and say, well, come on in, sit down, just have a piece of pie. We're making some of it. You're probably not going to say that right now, right? You'd be like, hey, what are you doing? Like, don't come in here. What's going on, right? You would be wanting to know, and you'd be really serious about wanting to know. Well, that's the same thing that happens to our body. Because that piece of food, that piece of material was never supposed to get in that bloodstream. We swallowed it, and we were chewing it like a penny. If we swallowed a penny, we would pass the penny. We wouldn't absorb the penny into the bloodstream, because if we absorbed a penny into our bloodstream, we wouldn't know. Our brain would be like, whoa, hold up. What is that doing in here? And what we're going to get is we're going to get an immune response. And what we're going to do is we're going to try to keep that penny, we're going to try to keep that food that particle as far away from our heart and our brain as we can. Like if someone walked into my house with a machete, I'm going to get between them and my family. I'm going to get between them and Leslie and Caitlin and Jacob that are in there right now, right? They're going to have to deal with me. They're not going to be dealing, because it's like, no, wait a minute. You're not allowed. First of all, no, but I'm not going to allow them to get to the most important things in my life. Well, the brain's like, no. You're not supposed to be in here. You're not allowed. You got this piece of food. Like, why is this food in my bloodstream right now? And so what the brain's going to do is the brain's going to shove that food as far away, that little particle or whatever it is, that toxin, that material that's not supposed to be there, whatever that thing is, it's going to put it as far away from its heart and the brain as it can, which means it's going to deposit it into the synovial fluid, into the joint capsule that's inside the hands. You're going to get the old trigger finger thing going on. You're going to get the big nodule in the middle. That when you fill your hands up with all that crap, you're going to get that tendon in the middle of your hand that's all knotted up in like a rope, right? Your hands are going to start doing weird, funny things. And that thumb is going to do this deal where it caves in. That joint's going to start caving in, and that joint's going to hurt, and that joint's going to be inflamed. And then you're going to go to your doctor, and you're going to tell your doctor that your thumb hurts. And when your thumb hurts, he's going to tell you that you have arthritis, and he's going to give you some sort of anti-inflammatory that tries to get rid of that inflammation that's in that thumb. And he's never, almost ever, going to say to you, that's coming from your gut, right? So tomorrow night, after you've had your Thanksgiving meal, and then you're gone back and you're doing the leftovers tomorrow night, and you're going back to get that pie, and you're going to take that saran wrap off the top of that pie and get you a little knife and cut you a little edge off of that. And then, yep, I know how it goes. I did it my whole life, right? When that happens, and you realize when you go to get in bed tomorrow night and you realize my hands are swollen, what's going on? There's other factors. We got blood sugar problems and insulin and all that stuff that's going on as well. But that's what's happening. That's one of the things that is happening. And it's coming from that leaky gut deal. It's coming from this here that is saying, all right, I've got this is a better picture of it. And you guys on the radio, I know you'll go back to Walk by Faith Radio here later on and look at these pictures. But this area right here is what I'm talking about, because these epithelial cells are held together with tight junctions, very tight junctions. They're held together, and then nothing gets through there. It's like, nope, I'm not letting you just leak through, because if it leaks through, then we don't have any defense to the outside world. Like we can't just let things that happen to get into our digestive tract just like leak through. It's like, no, we only want the things to get inside that are allowed to be absorbed. And on the outside of this, all these cells, we've got this whole mucosal membrane. We've got mucosa, this, snot, whatever, mucus. We've got this whole mucus on the outside of the lining right here of our cells. And then we've got all this microbiome that is going to actually be the buffer to what we're eating. And so we've got some protection right there, but we got to make sure we're not tearing down the microbiome. We got to make sure that we're not, you remember the crackheads, right? The crackhead bacteria that feed off of refined carbohydrates. The crackhead bacteria that feed off of the sugar and the starches and the cornbread and all those things that we're going to have, those crackhead bacteria, that they don't protect the neighborhood like they're supposed to. And the good bacteria get outnumbered, and then we start to get these little holes in our defense system. And then tight junctions between cells can become pulled apart due to inflammation, certain medications, and allergies. And that causes us to have this opening in our intestine. And then when we get this opening in our intestine, we get a particle into our lymph system and in our blood supply. There's the blood supply, venous blood. We got this artery, here's arterial. So we got blood supply and lymph supply, that all of a sudden, here's where the food's coming in. And here's where the particles coming in that's not supposed to be there. So you guys can see that right there. I hope that makes sense. I hope it makes sense on the radio, where we've got this tight junction of cells that's starting to leak. That tight junction is getting loose, and it's getting loose, and now particles are getting in, and our body is shunting those things away from our heart and pushing them into our hands. Okay? So that's the leaky gut side of it all. Well, then it pushes me into the idea of the immune response, right? Because that's what I was looking at on this other picture. I was looking at the immune response, and it's like, Okay, what does that mean? So we get off of that one and we come over here and it says, so now it's like, all right, food particles which have been broken down into small enough sizes for absorption. So we got those in the lumen. This is the absorptive surface of the small intestine covered over with mucus and secretory, the IgA antibodies. And that's what I want to talk about. I'm pushing into that. These are these IgA antibodies. There's the mucus that's covered it. We're in the lumen right there. These particles can either ferment or get absorbed across the intestinal mucosa. These IgA antibodies are in there. Poorly digested food particles, due to all those things, they can get absorbed. Leaky gut syndrome can result from inflammation, not inflation. Inflation has nothing to do with it, except it stresses you out. But no, inflammation of the intestine, parasites, medications such as cortisone, and allergies. This allows larger particles of food and other proteins to cross the mucosa and then get into the bloodstream. And then what it says right here, we have a formation of food-specific IgA, IgG, or IgE antibodies that now we have an immune response. So I looked at that and it's like, okay, what does that mean? And here's another sentence right here. The food immune complexes composed of food-specific IgA, IgG, or IgE antibodies, if not cleared from circulation, may deposit in tissue and initiate a host of allergic responses. And that's what I was saying. It may deposit in tissue if it's not cleared from the body. If you can't get it out, the brain wants it out first, right? So it's going to try to get it back into the digestive tract and get it out of the system, or it's going to try to eliminate it through the urinary tract in some form or fashion to get it out of the system, or it's going to say, nope, I got to deposit it in the tissue because I am not going to keep it in. I'm not going to let it get to my brain or my heart, right? That's what I'm talking about. So now we have an allergic reaction. That's what people say. That's what people say. Well, I'm lactose intolerant, or I don't really have a milk allergy. I promise you, you have a milk allergy if a piece of that milk gets through that intestinal wall. Because it's serum bovine albumin. Look it up if you want to. Serum bovine albumin is one of those big old particles that was supposed to just travel on through and get out. That's the only thing I could think of if someone wanted to make an argument for raw milk. Now, I am not a raw milk guy. I don't even think at 54 years old, I don't think any human being should be drinking another mammal's milk. Okay? So the idea that raw milk is better for you than not raw milk is only for this one thing. Because there's things in raw milk. Everybody wants to jump. See, it's like we get so, that's what we talked about on Monday night, when it's like, woe to you who makes the bitter sweet and the sweet bitter. Woe to you who makes the darkness light and the light darkness, right? We'll get into this conversation about milk and whether raw milk is better than pasteurized milk. And we'll take a stand on one of those two sides. And it's like, nope, neither one of those sides is, in my opinion, the right side. If you're starving to death, yes. If you're not starving to death, no. It's neither one. It's mama's milk to water. You want to put a little tea in there or some coffee, that's fine. It's mama's milk to water. It's not mama's milk to another mama's milk, okay? But here's what happens. That big protein from that cow that's not supposed to be inside of our body gets inside of our body. We are not, think about that for a second. We are not supposed to have a cow protein in our body that's coming from a cow's milk. That cow's milk was supposed to be going to that calf. I know it's sacrilegious, and I know I grew up in Chaves County, New Mexico, the largest milk producing place in the world in the 80s, and in the Southwest anyway. Look, I get it. I know how strange it sounds, but that's what happens. And then you're going to have a response. You're either going to get rid of it or you're going to deposit it in your tissue. Okay? So let's talk for a second about these Igs, right? These immunoglobulins. What does that even mean? The Igs, right? These are antibodies. These are these little Y-looking things, if you're watching this on social media, produced by plasma cells, B cells, in the immune response, the secondary immune response. Some of these are secreted in the intestines themselves. Some of them come from the bone marrow, and they're 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 responding to our outside world. And we've got several different kinds of them. Okay, we have IgMs that are primary immune response infectious agents and antigens. So these IgMs are responding to infectious agents. We have IgGs, which is a secondary immune response to pathogens. So now it's like we got bacteria and viruses and that type of thing, right? This is important host defense against bacteria that are encapsulated. And this is the only one that crosses the placenta. The IgG crosses the placenta, and now it's one of the most, it's the most prolific immune response in the baby is with your IgGs, right? Most abundant in the newborn. That's the IgG. And then you get into the IgA, major secretion found in saliva, tears, colostrum, intestinal, genital, and respiratory secretions. The IgAs. See, the way my brain works, it's like I got a lady that keeps having urinary tract infections. And it's like, why does she keep having urinary tract infections? What is the problem? Why? What's going on? And then when I'm working through something like this and I see IgA is a major secretion found in saliva, tears, colostrum, in your intestinal tract, in your urinary urinary tract. Sorry, trying to put two words together, and in your lungs, right? That's your IgAs, and it protects epithelial surfaces of digestion, respiratory, and genitourinary problems. Okay, and then you get into IgEs, and I'm protect against parasites, bind to mast cells and basophils, and that's where you get your allergic reactions, is your IgEs. And then IgD, they're not real sure. They think it may have something to do with lymphocyte differentiation. So, but what I want to talk about tonight is the IgA part of it all. So because it's like, wait a minute, this is protecting that epithelium. And this is this leaky gut situation. And this is what's going on with that. And so I just started searching stuff, right? And I got several of these articles about looking at it, the IgAs, what they're used for, what's important in it. And I just wanted to read some of the highlighted things because we've got this immune response, right? We've got this immune response. Let's see where I got it right here. And we're having an immune response for a reason. Where'd I go with it? Hang on. Let me get back up to the top. I was reading and I lost my place. So the IgA plays a key role in defending mucosal surfaces against attack by infectious microorganisms, such sites present at a major site of susceptibility due to their vast surface area and their constant exposure to ingested or inhaled material, which makes sense. It's in our lungs. It's in our digestive tract. It's something that's going to get attacked a lot, so it's important that we have that right there, right? But there's also other opportunities for IgAs to respond to things. And so I'm going to get over here And this article is excessive intake of sugar, an accomplice of inflammation. So we're getting this immune response. That's really what I wanted to make the point was we're getting the immune response with our IgAs, our IgGs, all these sort of things. Our IgEs are all attacking this thing that's coming through in our diet or in our lungs, right? But what happens how does excessive sugar high intakes of sugar, how does it affect our IgAs? What could we be doing that's causing us to have a decreased immune response? That's kind of what in a horrible way of saying it, that's what I was trying to say. What is it? What could be happening, and what does the literature say of sugar and how it affects us? Because you're like, wait a minute, you're saying that sugar might make my thumbs glucose, right? We need glucose in order for these immunoglobulins, these antibodies to work. We need glucose. It's important for glucose to bind with them and then for them to activate and to work. So we need glucose in our blood. We need controlled glucose. We don't need too much glucose, right? So let's read, because I'm getting through the end of this. Effects of dietary sugar on low-grade chronic inflammation. It has been shown that excessive intake of dietary sugar can cause metabolic disorders and induce the increase of inflammation mediators and certain pro-inflammatory cytokines. Pro-inflammatory cytokines is that whole problem with the lungs in various tissue, which leads to insulin resistance and low-grade chronic inflammation. Low-grade chronic inflammation could be caused by factors secreted by adipose tissue, inflammatory factors secreted by the liver tissue, and increased intestinal permeability. Right there, increased intestinal permeability, which may eventually lead to development of cardiometabolic diseases, but it also can lead to other problems. And some of those other problems could be autoimmune diseases. Autoimmune diseases are T-cell mediated inflammatory pathologies. Normally, the body's immune system does not respond to its own components, known as autoimmune tolerance. AID, autoimmune disease, is an immune pathology state in which the body's autoimmune tolerance mechanism is dysregulated or destroyed, resulting in damage or dysfunction of its own tissue and organ, because they're going to get into rheumatoid arthritis. Effects of dietary sugar on rheumatoid arthritis. Rheumatoid arthritis is one of the most common systemic chronic autoimmune diseases caused by genetic, environmental, and endogenous factors. It is characterized by systemic inflammation and persistent synovitis, inflammation of the synovial tissues. In recent years, numerous studies have shown that sugar-sweetened beverages play a key role in the pathogenesis of RA. That's all you need to know with that. And also with multiple sclerosis. High consumption of glucose, fructose, and sugar-sweetened beverages is known to reduce the beneficial flora in the gut. That's what I was talking about. That's the high sugar is going to decrease the beneficial flora in the gut, which has been found to be associated with rheumatoid arthritis. Now, how many of you have been told that your rheumatoid arthritis is your genetics, not your gut? This thing with your thumb. They're going to tell you that, yep, that's rheumatoid. It's your RA factor and all your thing, and it's a genetic problem. Well, my mama had the same thing, and so did my grandma. And there you go. And now we just believe it. But we didn't ever take into consideration the beneficial gut flora that was destroyed, the crackhead bacteria in the gut causing the leaky gut problem, causing the immune response, causing the destruction of the joint itself. Right? Effects of dietary sugar on multiple sclerosis. Again, autoimmune disease. That's why in a world that I live in, I don't believe that. I don't buy that whole autoimmune. My body doesn't mistakenly attack itself. My body purposely attacks itself. So that's going to get into what's going on. The effects of dietary sugar on psoriasis. Psoriasis is a chronic inflammatory skin disease characterized by abnormal proliferation of epidermal keratinocytes. Previous studies have shown that inflammatory adipocytokines such as interleukin 6, and there you go, inflammation again, right? The effects of dietary sugar on inflammatory bowel disease. You're going to have that same thing, right? Mechanisms by how sugar affects inflammation. I went through all that stuff so fast, I know it's probably making your head spin, but I just wanted you to think about it. Tomorrow night when your hands swell up and your joints hurt and you're thinking about having another piece of that pie, just stop and say how thankful you're going to be. That's all I got for you tonight. I hope you guys have a great Thanksgiving, and we'll be back. I've got a recorded show on the radio for tomorrow night. We'll be back live on Friday night. You guys enjoy your loved ones, and let me know if there's anything I can do to help. And we'll see you guys on Friday.